You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 528. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Hejsan, András! Do you know what we are celebrating this episode?
This episode...
I don't think you know.
I don't know. We've got a TWISH, but it's not a celebratory one. But what do you mean?
It is my 500th episode, because I keep track. And this is the 500th time I am a host of the ESP.
No.
It is.
I'm surprised to hear that, because I would have said that you were present
always
for at least like 520.
That is not true. Apparently, I've missed 28 episodes, but this is the big 500 for me. So
congratulations!
Thank you very much,
my friend. That's real stamina there.
Yes. Yeah, I'll let you know when you come to the same.
Okay. So you're keeping track of everyone's.
I have an Excel sheet. What can I say?
Yeah, you're a number person. Yeah, so it has to be. That has to be the case.
Yeah. All right. So what's going on otherwise?
Otherwise, this is quite a busy time for me, because I don't know if our listeners remember, or do you remember, but the 22nd of April, which is Earth Day, this is when we usually, since 2021, we've been handing out the Flat Earth Awards.
Ah, the Flat Earth Day.
Exactly. So This is quite a busy time. We are in the process of the last round of votes within the organization of the Hungarian Skeptics Society. And it's really interesting how this year's election period had an influence on how the selection process worked for the Flat Earth Award as well.
Did Orban win this one? The Flat Earth Award?
Actually, that would almost be a yes.
Almost a yes. Wow.
So just to give you an overall idea, the first round, we were accepting suggestions as to nominees. And we had to be very careful to examine whether the nominees all meet the initial criteria, obviously.
Sure.
But we ended up with a list of 11 nominees altogether. And of those 11, there were 5 that were the finalists. Altogether, those 5 took 80% of the number of popular vote.
Okay.
So that is quite a big thing. But out of those 5, 2 were finalists last year as well. They were both anti-vaccination activists. And one of them was the winner last year. But this year, 3 of the nominees were actually political in a way.
Sensitive.
So one of them, exactly. And one of them was that we got really pissed off, and many of our supporters and followers as well, apparently, that an astrologer, a guru of sorts, got the Knight's Cross of the Hungarian Order of Merit, which is among the highest prestige awards that you can get from the Hungarian government. And the reason for her getting that, at least that's what we assume, that the reason she was nominated in the first place was that she is the wife of one of the most prominent figures of the Orban Mafia organization.
Is this a person in the government, or is he...
No, he's not. He's a formal TV show host, but still, he's very loud, he's very prominent, and now he's responsible for the production of movies as well, obviously with the support of the government. Well, the previous government, that is. I decided not to waste any time talking about Orban's loss on the elections, though, but it's hard. It's difficult to really keep to that. But apparently, this was the one that got the most support as a nominee from both the populace, our supporters outside of the organization, and within the organization. And it's not the person who got the Hungarian Order of Merit, it's the ones who nominated them and the person who actually handed out that cross, and that is the president of the Republic of Hungary. And as the nomination took place, it had to involve the Prime Minister's office as well, because it always has to.
Uh-huh.
So this is how indirectly Orban is included in this as well.
Okay. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah. So we are handing out that to Orban. Well, by the time this goes out, this is very exclusive because you are the first person to know that, actually, because we are handing the award out tomorrow as of the day of this recording.
Yeah.
But by the time this goes out, it will already have been announced.
Yeah. So if there are any leaks, you know who spilled the beans.
I know who spilled the beans, so I'm going to have to kill you. Yes, the other nominee, which was a political actor, was the Orban regime's propaganda machine, which did a lot of damage in the last year or so in terms of the public discourse and how closely connected we are to reality. And the third is the political party that is the largest supporter of anti-vaccination. But they have been nominated before. Didn't get the award this year either. So I said I'm not going to talk about that too much, so let's focus on something that is truly European, and that could not be more distant from Orban, being European. By the time this goes out, it will already have been almost over, but as of this recording, we are currently in the middle of European Immunization Week 2026. So if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that both Pontus and myself subscribe to the notion that vaccines are perhaps the greatest triumph of evidence-based medicine. And I think that many of our listeners agree with that too. But this isn't just another awareness campaign. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the initiative. And the theme is, for every generation, vaccines work. I would have added bitches, but it's just my weird taste of communication. But the campaign is led by the WHO Europe region in conjunction with the European Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, and is basically a massive region-wide push to remind us that vaccines aren't just for toddlers. It's about the life course approach that this really tries to emphasize, ensuring that from the HPV vaccine for adolescents to shingles and flu shots for the elderly, no one is left vulnerable if willing to take what science-based medicine has to offer.
That's right. I had my shingles vaccines last year. I mentioned that before. Yeah.
Great.
I had to pay for it. It was expensive, but I did it anyway.
Good, because you're a responsible and
scared old man. I don't want to be sick.
No, you're just reasonable. But it always boggles the mind how it could still be necessary to do these campaigns, because the data from the ECDC and WHO shows a very sobering picture. Despite all our progress, we're seeing a resurgence of diseases we thought were under control. Measles cases have spiked early this year, and pertussis, whooping cough, saw a staggering 8-fold increase recently. Wow. So we know that vaccination rates are dipping in several member states, fueled by infodemics and a decline in the fear of diseases that vaccines have made invisible. Because when people stop seeing the disease, they start focusing on the myths. Right?
Yeah.
The European Immunization Week is the evidence-based counter-offensive. It's about mobilizing health professionals, debunking the vaccine hesitancy narratives, and most importantly, supporting the infrastructure that keeps our communities immune. So please look out for local events, check your own vaccination records, and maybe share some actual peer-reviewed data with that one or a few acquaintances on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok that we all have, who are peddling pseudoscience and conspiracy theories, because as the slogan says, vaccines work for every generation. But I have to add that they only do when we actually use them. So
okay, that's a good lesson. Tell that to Romania, where measles, as always, is a big problem.
Yeah, we should invite Ovidio back on.
We haven't had him back for a long time.
Yeah.
No, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So take care of yourself, old man. That's a very good important
and young people too.
Advice.
Everybody should take care of themselves and get vaccinated. Very good. They should not do what I did, and I also hinted about this last week. I went to a spa, and because it was my wife's big birthday, 25 or so. She wanted to go to a spa, and of course, wouldn't be my first choice. But so we took the kids, and
just to clarify, a spa is not a supermarket.
No, spa. There's no R at the end.
Okay,
SPA only. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
So this is what people do to relax, and some people do it because they think it's very healthy. I think it's healthy to relax, so in that respect, it's fine. But of course,
take good care of yourself. Yeah,
there was a lot of wine involved as well, which is not so good for you. But anyway, but so it was me, my wife, our 3 children, and 1 boyfriend, and we went to that, and we spent the night, and we had ordered a big experience in the morning there at 11 o'clock the following day. It was the big experience. We didn't know what it was. At least I didn't. But okay, so we got there. We got the room for ourselves. Because there were 6 of us, right? So we were 1 team, and there were 2 guides to help us. Well, the first thing that happened, we went in and we were supposed to take a foot bath in hot water with salt from the Dead Sea, because I guess the Dead Sea salt is special somehow. And then she brought out, this guide brought out some very strange looking things, rubber things, said, this is something you should have on your back. Most people have it on their back. Maybe some of you have heard about cupping. Oh my God. And I had this moment, should I be the guy to rant about how nonsense that is? But I said, okay, no, I will do the thing just to have done it, because then I can, it'll be an experience. That was the experience for me, right? So cupping, as I've seen it on the internet, is usually illustrated with glass bowls that you heat them up, and then you put them on your back normally. And then as the air inside these cups cool down, it contracts and becomes, it's not a vacuum, but it becomes what do you call that?
A lower pressure?
It becomes a lower pressure, exactly. So, but these were cheaper ones, I guess. So they were just soft rubber cups that you pressed them on your body, and then that created some sort of under pressure as well. And so I had a nice cup mark on my back there. There were 2 of them, but they were rather uncomfortable, so I took away 1, but I kept 1 for a little bit longer just to make an impression, quite literally. And so that was the main thing. I'd never thought I would do that. And none of us in this group, of course, are very convinced by this kind of thing. So we thought it was we thought it was fun. We thought it was fun.
Yeah. So did you all do it?
We all did it, and you did it on yourself. You didn't. You just tried to put it on your back yourself. And it was actually a lot of things we just did on ourselves, and then we did on each other a little bit. We had a steam room, then we had a sauna, we had a tepid bath, which was sort of lukewarm. I don't know what that was all about. We had a Turkish mud orgy where you put all of this mud all over you. There was the Amazon rain shower. Then there was what they called a waterfall, which is basically a bucket full of water on top of you. And then it was interesting, because then the other guy came in and said, now it's time for, and I misheard him. I heard him say, now it's time for the Jehovah oil. And I said, Jehovah oil? What the hell is that?
What is it, jojoba or something?
Jojoba oil, was it? And I had never heard about jojoba oil, so I thought it was Jehovah oil. So my skeptical senses were really triggered. That's okay, now we have the God oil. But it was just a little bit of oil, and it didn't do anything for me. So anyway, it was an experience, as they advertised it as. It took 2 hours to do this, and after the mud thing, you really had a good real shower, and that was also the waterfall treatment and all that. So afterwards, at least we were clean, and I had a cupping mark on my back.
Okay, was it painful?
A little bit, yes. It wasn't comfortable, no. So I took that's why I removed 1 of them. It stung a little bit. It wasn't terribly painful, but it wasn't nice.
Some recordings that I've come across show a huge amount of suction going on inside the cup, and the bolting of the skin is very far.
Yeah,
and that looks really painful. Yeah. So I wouldn't really want to do that.
I didn't do it for very long. You could probably leave it on longer, and that would have been worse.
But well done, keeping an open mind about it.
Yes. Thankfully, it wasn't wet cupping.
Okay.
Wet cupping is when you cut the skin first, so it actually bleeds out. That's hardcore. And I guess they wouldn't do that. They would probably get sued unless or something. I don't know. That's really for the real enthusiasts.
That is,
but
like,
that's more like
medieval
bloodletting
times.
That's
that's
bloodletting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do that?
Stupid. Yeah, that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's what I did.
Well done. It sounds like you enjoy the experience itself with the family, which why wouldn't you?
Of course. We had a great time.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of having a great time, skeptical events, skeptical gatherings are always super fun. We can both testify that this is the case, right?
Oh, indeed.
In terms of QEDs, European Skeptics Congresses. I've also attended TEM London back in the day. So those are super fun. But the Germans do that quite often as well. So the organization Skeptics is currently organizing the second Skeptival, which will take place on the 10th and 11th of October in Berlin. 2 days with exciting lectures, education, critical thinking, knowledge, and fun. It sounds really exciting. And it's going to be a week before the great event in Liverpool, the European Skeptics Congress.
Is it 2 weeks before?
No, it's a week before. This is the 10th and 11th, and the other is 16th to 18th, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, yes. I should know that. Yeah.
Obviously, this will all be in German. If someone is interested in being on the stage at Skeptical, you can submit your proposal for a lecture. Obviously, you'll find the link on the show notes, and you just have to stay tuned because more information about tickets, directions, etc. will follow soon. They say that the program will be announced in early July, so stay tuned for that. It sounds very exciting. Too bad, even though there are 100 million people speaking German in Europe, not all of us do. So
for that, you have to go to Liverpool, and very soon we will announce when the tickets are on sale for the ESC in Liverpool.
Sounds good. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, very quickly here, Pontus coming in doing the edits of this episode. I'm very happy to announce that the tickets for the European Skeptics Congress in Liverpool 16th to 18th of October will go on sale on 6th of May at 10 a.m. British time, which means 11 CET. We're so looking forward to seeing you all there, and of course, the link will be in the show notes. Back to the show.
Okay, but this has been quite a long intro segment of this episode.
Let's start the show.
Why don't we actually move on to the first regular segment, which is called TWISH, also known as This Week in Skeptical History. And this week marks a dark and significant milestone in European history, but it also has a skeptical angle. The 26th of April is the 40th anniversary of the 1986 disaster at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine.
Yeah.
For many, Chernobyl has become a symbol of the invisible killer, so to speak, which is radiation. But for those who know more about how the accident happened, it's also now a shorthand for human arrogance and neglect. But for skeptics, it's also a masterclass in how fear, poor risk communication, and a lack of scientific literacy can create a complete set of disaster mythology that seems to persist even 4 decades later. Today, let's try to peel back the layers of folklore to look at what the science actually tells us and how we should approach this. So first, a quick refresher on the facts. On the 26th of April 1986, during a poorly designed safety test on reactor unit 4, a combination of inherent design flaws, specifically a positive void coefficient, and operator errors led to a massive power surge. So big that it caused 2 explosions that blew the 1,000-ton lid off the reactor, releasing a plume of radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere. So, these are the general facts. And this is where the popular narrative and the skeptical reality begin to diverge. The most persistent myth is regarding the death toll. If you browse sensationalist documentaries, you'll hear figures ranging from 100,000 to nearly 1 million deaths linked to the accident, right? However, there are numbers that we actually have access to. the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation and the World Health Organization provide a much different picture from that 100,000 to a million figure. The immediate toll is the first thing that we need to talk about. It is well documented and relatively easy to assess. We know that 2 workers died almost instantly in the blast itself. Then, in the weeks and months following the accident, 28 firefighters and plant workers died from acute radiation syndrome due to high radiation exposure. They had to go in, they had to deal with the situation, they had to close down the reactors as much as possible, to prevent further leaks and all that. So they were the other 28. So we're talking about 30 people as an immediate toll. But when it comes to the long-term toll, the picture is much less clear. The reason for that is partly political, because it took a long time for authorities to admit that the situation was dire. And they also hesitated to take action and try to handle the situation because there was a concern about trying to cover the whole thing up. Not literally, not the reactor itself.
Well, they did that too.
But the situation. Yeah, but that came later, yeah. But we have to understand that the amount of radioactive material that escaped the closed system was such that even though it was detectable all over Europe after a while and for a long time, even huge distances from the source, the concentrations did not reach life-threatening levels outside of the immediate area of the plant. And I know this is very vague. I know we could go into all kinds of radiation levels and what the acceptable levels are and all that. But let's just stick with that for now. The primary health impact that is well substantiated by evidence was a spike in thyroid cancer among evacuees, especially those who were children at the time, largely due to contaminated food that they consumed. While there were over 6,000 cases of that documented, the survival rate was over 98%, resulting in roughly 15 deaths altogether.
15
out of the 6,000 cases.
Yeah.
And that's out of about 300,000 residents who were resettled because of the disaster.
Yeah.
Who were initially exposed to a larger amount of radiation. So there is a statistical challenge here. While some models predict up to 4,000 eventual deaths among the most exposed, including liquidators and residents living in the vicinity, these are statistical projections. In reality, outside of thyroid cancer, there is no reliable evidence of a major public health impact attributable to radiation in the general population. The millions figure is just a classic example of how something often used by regulatory bodies to formulate public health policies, like a linear no threshold of dose response, this can be misunderstood and used incorrectly to predict deaths that never actually materialized in clinical data. And this is what happened here. So people assumed that this would be the case, that there would be thousands and thousands or even hundreds of thousands of deaths. But the clinical data doesn't support that. And it's not because it's a cover-up. Why would the international community outside of the former Soviet Union want to cover that up? Yeah, we can talk about that. There is the nuclear lobby and all that, but
the lizard people that rule the world.
The lizard people, yes, the lizard people. But we have to mention that the number of people who died of all the nuclear accidents altogether around the world that are well documented are currently around 100 people. That we can safely assume that they had something to do with that. And that's all the nuclear accidents in the history of nuclear power plants. Okay? Now, there's another persistent myth and pop culture reinforced by the otherwise excellent Chernobyl HBO miniseries that I really enjoyed. They often portray radiation victims as being somewhat contagious. But don't know if you remember, but there's a heartbreaking scene where a pregnant woman is told not to touch her dying husband because he's radioactive.
Oh, yeah. He's
Do you remember that?
Glowing in the dark.
Yeah, glowing in the dark. So it's important to clarify this because radiation is not like a virus. Contamination is a real issue. But once the first responders were washed and their clothes removed, so decontamination measures were taken, they were not a danger to others.
Unless she eats him. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So their tissues, not necessarily. So most of the radiation that they were exposed to did not result in radioactive material entering the body.
No, that's right. It's superficial, most of it. Yeah.
Except for a little bit of it inhaled or swallowed or something. But that's not a huge amount compared to what the contamination on clothing and everything really meant. So the problem with radiation exposure is that once the exposure has happened, the damage will have already been done to the tissues. But they break down eventually, and this is what leads to death. So the danger is definitely not to the extent that they would have been dangerous to be near or let alone touch. The tragic isolation of these victims, depicted in this miniseries, for example, was often based on a misunderstanding of the difference between exposure and contamination.
Yeah.
It's a case of non-clarification of the different concepts. Then there's the idea, and this is my favorite, that the exclusion zone is a twisted landscape of three-headed wolves and glowing plants. Actually, in reality, the exclusion zone has become one of Europe's largest unofficial nature reserves. While scientists do find genetic damage in individual organisms on occasion, like darker pigmented frogs or certain changes in insect populations, there are no monsters produced by this alleged wasteland.
No.
In fact, the absence of humans has been a far greater bonus to wildlife than the radiation was a curse.
Yeah. So imagine that. Humans are a much bigger threat than radiation.
Exactly. It seems that nature finds the presence of humans more toxic than a 40-year-old nuclear meltdown.
Yeah.
So wolves, lynx, and the rare Przewalski's horse are thriving in the area. But you probably remember the blue dogs story as well. I think we reported on that.
Yes.
A couple of years ago. Well, that was a classic as well. So photos of these blue-dyed dogs started circulating online, and people immediately jumped into the conclusion that they were mutants. But far from it. They had just been hanging out around a knocked-over toilet that leaked blue liquid, which was used as disinfectant or something. It's hilarious, but no, it's not the case. There are no mutant organisms around the area. With all that said, the most documented health effect of Chernobyl is a very unfortunate psychological trauma. And that's partly because of the hyperbole used in communication sometimes. Thanks to that psychological trauma, the real tragedy was not just the isotopes, it was radiophobia. The forced relocation of more than 300,000 people, combined with the lack of transparent information from the Soviet government, all led to widespread chronic anxiety, depression, and something that psychology calls learned helplessness. Many people in Belarus and Ukraine viewed themselves as living dead. We have been exposed, we are dead anyway, so that led to higher rates of smoking, alcohol abuse, and poor lifestyle choices altogether. And one of the most horrific outcomes of all this was a surge in unnecessary abortions across Europe. Estimated between 100,000 and 200,000 cases, as terrified parents were misled into believing that their children would be born with what they call nuclear mutations. This was a tragedy born not out of a radiation itself, but out of a failure of communication on the authorities' part when it comes to the scientific reality of the whole situation. I think that's tragic. 100 to 200,000 abortions across Europe because of that mindset.
Normally we're pro-abortion, but that should be based on rational and logical thinking, right? So a child that you really want shouldn't be unnecessarily aborted. But of course, if your situation is different, you should have the choice. But it should be an informed choice. And in this case, it wasn't informed because there was misinformation.
It was malinformed or misinformed choices.
Yeah.
So we could keep on going about this, but I think we all get the idea, right?
Yeah.
So on this 40th anniversary, we remember the liquidators and the families displaced. They're in our hearts. But we also remind ourselves that in the absence of clear, evidence-based information, fear tends to fill the vacuum. Chernobyl isn't just a lesson in nuclear physics. It's a lesson in why we need skepticism to navigate a world where the fear of a disaster can sometimes be as damaging as the disaster itself. And that brings us to the next segment, when we look around Europe and find out what's new.
Well, unfortunately, this is not very new, but it's something we need to talk about. There's some new information coming up about a subject that we have talked about several times before, and it's unfortunately rather depressing. What I'm talking about is the terrible abuse that took place in many of the Irish so-called mother and baby homes, officially known as
the
Magdalene Asylums. That's what they were called. Sounds better? I don't know. Just to recap, we've heard it many times, young women, sometimes underaged, if they got pregnant, they were sent to these homes to have their baby. But what they met there were nuns and church officials who believed that they were dirty sinners, and they were terribly mistreated, sometimes undernourished, not taken properly care of if they fell sick. Some of the children of these young mothers even died from neglect or mistreatment. And for those who survived, they didn't get a proper education, so they left there eventually without any schooling, and they were shunned for the terrible sin that their mother had committed, quote unquote. And I mean, sometimes we're talking about rape victims, and sometimes not, but still terrible. Sometimes there were variations to this story. Maureen Sullivan was a victim to mistreatment by nuns, and not for being pregnant herself. When she was just a child, her stepfather sexually abused her for years, and she wouldn't tell anyone. She was scared. She didn't think they would believe her. She was afraid of getting in trouble if she said anything. But somehow people around her at school, etc., they realized something was wrong. She had bruises on her arms sometimes. And when she was 12, a teacher, who was also a nun, bribed her with chocolate to tell what was going on. And as a result, she was then removed from her home, which is sensible, of course, the first thing. But she barely got time to even say goodbye to her mother, and she was moved to a nunnery far away. Not technically a mother and baby home, but in practice very similar. And at this place, they told her she now had a new name. She was to be called Frances, and there were many other women there, some of them young. She was the youngest. And presumably for the same reason, but Maureen today can't tell exactly, because they were not allowed to talk. They couldn't really make friends with one another, and if they tried to talk and ask questions, they were punished. And the first thing Maureen saw when she came there, remember she's 12 years old, she witnessed how a young woman was commanded by a nun to eat like a dog from a bowl on the floor, on her floor.
Yeah.
And she wasn't, where have I ended up? What is this? And she and the other women were forced to work in the laundry. There was a laundry. People could leave their clothes there and get them laundered. So it was a sort of a business, but they were themselves more or less slaves. She had been told that she would be moved to school when she was removed from her home, but that never happened. And when she asked, it was just met by silence. They were the women there were forced not just to do the laundry, they were also forced to manufacture rosaries and crucifixes to be sold to pilgrims. And if they didn't work hard enough, they were beaten by the nuns. So very pious nuns. Oh. They were called penitents. So they were there to do penance for their sins. And the nuns saw them as dirty sinners, as I said. After being treated like this for 4 years, she was moved to another place after 2 years, but it was more or less the same. But at 16, after 4 years, she was suddenly sent home again, without not much notice and any explanation, really. Now she was to go home. Her stepfather was still married to her mother, still lived there, of course, because there's no divorce possible in a strictly Catholic environment. And of course, stepfather was not very happy with her because she had told people what he had done. So she couldn't really stay there for very long. She moved to England, and she is now 71 years old. So this was a long time ago, but she's still there. She's here, but now she has decided to finally tell her story. She's been married twice, but she never told any of her husbands or her children what happened to her when she was little. So her life was ruined because she was raped by her stepfather as a child. Terrible, terrible story. She has had emotional problems all her life, have had hard time to express her feelings and emotions. And I have nothing more than that. That's a terrible story, but there's another news item which is very related to this. A reminder of a situation that we've talked about before as well. There's another person who's called Rosemary Adasser. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. She is 70 years old, so very much of the same generation. She's living in England. She and her twin brother were separated from each other at the age of 6 and went to different institutions like this. And I've said before that there's a program now to compensate victims monetarily for what happened. It's a small comfort, but it's still some attempt to rectify things a little bit. But Rosemary would lose £1,000 per month in benefits if she accepted her compensation now. So she can't afford to accept the compensation that she is owed. Her brother, on the other hand, he still lives in Ireland, and the rules are different there, so he can get his part, but she can't do that. And this is crazy, really crazy. So England needs to change the rules for this, and there are a movement now trying to change the rules because this is ridiculous, not in a funny way, but it's very upsetting. There are thousands of these victims who live in England now, and they are in the same situation as Rosemary is. Many of them anyway. They can't accept the compensation that they have the right to because they would lose more money in benefits if they do. Yeah, sorry for bringing the mood down, but this stories like this that makes me fume when people defend religion and say that at least they do a lot of charity and good things for the society, even if you don't believe it. That's bullshit. They do a lot of bad things as well, and this is horrible. And this is not why I don't believe in God, not because religions are bad in themselves. I don't believe in God because of rational reasons, but it makes me very angry when people are doing very bad things because they are so misguided. I'm sure that many of these nuns were not originally bad people, I don't think. They were just victims of their education and their beliefs and the situation that they were in.
So from very painful and completely nonsensical stuff to do, let's turn to Germany for some sensible news coming from Berlin. So there was a recent report in the Zeit, and according to that, Germany is moving closer to ending the practice of health insurers covering homeopathic treatments in the country. For those outside of Germany, the situation has been a bit of a skeptical nightmare. While homeopathy isn't part of the standard benefits package, there is a bit of a legal loophole that insurance companies could use in order to market their products with the offer of a voluntary benefit to claim homeopathic treatment costs. Back from the government.
So they are luring in customers by saying, you don't just get real medicine, we'll throw in some fake one as well.
Yes, exactly. So apparently this March, there was a government-appointed financial commission report that doesn't seem to be pulling any punches. They have explicitly recommended the complete removal of homeopathy and anthroposophic medicine from these insurance benefits.
Good.
And it's pretty much exactly what we've been saying along with the Informationsnetzwerk Homöopathie and the former federal health minister Karl Lauterbach, that these treatments have no proven medical benefit whatsoever beyond the placebo effect. And their funding violates the core principle of public health care having to be sufficient, appropriate, and economic, right?
Yeah.
And Lauterbach has long been a vocal critic of homeopathy. He is now, from opposition, pushing for this reform as part of a wider package to stabilize the health insurance system. The commissioners estimates that cutting these sugar pills could save the system around 40 million euros per year.
Wow.
Well, the healthcare system has a multi-billion euro budget, so it sounds very small, but as advocates pointed out, it's not just about the money, it's about the message. By funding homeopathy, the state gives it a seal of approval, and it simply hasn't earned that through science, so it should not be given. But obviously, the homeopathy lobby is up in arms. They're crying about freedom of choice, but if the Commission's recommendations are followed, we could see these payments finally phased out starting in 2027. So,
finally.
Long road, but it seems that the German government is finally realizing that when it comes to the national budget, there's no such thing as acceptable loss. So, diluting the costs should be taken to the extreme so that they completely disappear, just like the active ingredients in homeopathic remedies. This is the case.
But it's not like they're trying to even ban homeopathy. It's just that it won't be funded. So if you want to buy sugar pills, you can go ahead and do that anyway. And I don't know how expensive they are, but they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and there is, in the legal system, there is a loophole that can be used by insurance companies that should not be there. So it should be taken away. It's just an error in the matrix. So
yeah. Okay, so several times I've talked about the fact that longer and tougher punishments do not prevent crimes. That's what the science says. Research is very clear on this. It makes sense as well. If I contemplate robbing a bank, for the record, I do not, but if I would...
Please do not, yeah.
Yes. The threat of getting 10 years in prison instead of 5 years in prison do not influence my decision very much. 10 years, 5 years, what I don't want to happen is I don't want to get caught. If I think I will get caught, then 5 years is bad enough for me not to rob this bank. If I think I will get away with it, then it doesn't matter if it's 5 or 10 years, of course. So as I have said, many politicians do not care about this logic or the science. They want to be perceived as tough on crime, and many voters like that, of course. They think, I will vote for the guys that are tough against crime, and that means voting for longer prison sentences. So we have a problem here in communication. As skeptics, we try to look through this, or at least we should. It's difficult because to some extent you intuitively want to punish the bad guys, right? It feels right. But if longer sentences create harder criminals, more crime, and cost more money, then it's counterproductive. Now, the Swedish government, they want to be hard on crime. And they have, and I think I've mentioned this before, they've ordered an investigation, and it's called Straffreformutredningen. That's a word for you. It's a little bit like German, Swedish. It sometimes is. You can staple a lot of words and put them all together in one long word. So Straffreformutredningen. That means the punishment reform investigation, but you type it as one long word. Anyway, this investigation was called for to see how punishment can be tougher. And then, as is the practice in all such things, the investigation went out for review by experts and concerned government bodies, including, for one, the Council on Legislation, and then other agencies and organizations that are involved in these kind of things and are experts on these things. They all came back with serious criticism and reservations, and even the guy who led the actual investigation, he concluded that it was doubtful that these changes would reduce crime. But, he said, it will cost around 1.5 billion euros per year to do it. That's from the guy who did the investigation. So, the Swedish skeptics, I wasn't personally involved, but the Swedish skeptics, VOF, that I'm part of, published an article in one of the major newspapers here in Sweden on the 10th of April, so 10 days ago when we record this, trying to point out the importance of basing laws on facts, science and reason. Taking this thing as an example that politicians do not tend to do that. And what surprised me was not just that we got a lot of pushback from this or backlash, but also it came from some familiar people who are, or at least have been, very much part of the skeptical movement, close to the Swedish skeptics in any way. Many who call themselves skeptics came out on social media saying things like, okay, now it's finally time to leave the organization, meaning VOF. They labeled VOF left-wing activists who start with a desire to be lenient. So apparently, we start with a desire to be lenient on criminals, and then we tweak the science to fit our needs. That's not what's happening at all. So I want to relate one such exchange on Facebook, not word by word, but roughly what happened there, because it just boggles the mind. One person, and I know he has been a skeptic in the past, he even was part of a skeptical podcast 10 years ago. The podcast was independent from VOF, but still. So he accuses VOF of promoting science that is positive for the criminals, and he's saying that crime has actually decreased over the last couple of years. For instance, he pointed out that the number of shootings has decreased. And he says that is thanks to the current party or parties in charge being, quote, competent and having made good decisions, end quote. So who exactly is politicizing this? Is it we or him? He's clearly taking a side. And he's not unintelligent. I know that. But science is science, and in addition, he is admitting that crime is going down. So why do we need to be tougher on crime right now? We're already going in the right direction, according to his own logic. But for us pointing out that tougher on crime will probably be counterproductive, it'll cost a lot of money, and it will not create a better environment. I mean, it will just create more criminals, because the longer you are in prison, the more you are exposed to other criminals, the more cynical you become, the more shunned from society you become, and you have less options when you get out, yada, yada, yada. Everything points to the same way. And it's very frustrating when you have people who should know better accusing you of being political when it's actually the other way around. But somehow he thinks we are the biased ones. And he's not, I'm talking about one person, but he was not alone. There are many people coming out doing this.
Politics. Yeah. Always. All right, that brings us to the end of the news round, which means that we are about to find out who's being really wrong.
Yes, so the really wrong this week is actually a continuation of my previous item.
Okay.
Because as a major part of Straffreformutredningen, and you know how to spell it by now, right? The punishment reform investigation. Yes.
Yeah.
The Swedish government have now decided that from 1st of July this year, the lowest age to be sentenced to prison will go from 15 to 13 years old. Also against all expertise in the field. And there is one, I should acknowledge, there is one background here which makes this not logical but popular. Because criminal gangs have started over the last couple of years to systematically recruit underage boys, children, really, to commit hard crimes, even including murder or at least attempted murders. And that is a huge problem. But putting children in prison will not help. They are too young to take rational decisions anyway. They are kids. Putting them in jail is just making them criminals for life. And it's a typical quote-unquote easy solution, which will not solve this very complex problem. But it sounds good. It has even been tried before. In Denmark, in 2010, Denmark, for very similar reasons, lowered the age from 15 to 14. But they reversed that after less than 2 years because it didn't work. It didn't reduce crimes. It just created a lot of new problems. And since I have already ranted about this, I will keep it short here. But for ignoring experts and science in order to score cheap political points, the Swedish government gets this week's award for being really wrong.
Ooh. We are handing out really wrong awards and flat earth awards to governments.
Politicians. We are politicizing the skeptical movement. That's right.
Yeah. The skeptical movement has already been politicized in a way, but we like to talk about policies. And it's not about party politics. It's about policies.
Correct. Yes.
All right. But that brings us to the last part of this episode, which is when we are saying goodbye with a quote. Okay, and this quote comes from German mathematician, physicist, and astronomer Carl Friedrich Gauss. Mathematics is the queen of sciences, and number theory is the queen of mathematics. She often condescends to render service to astronomy and other natural sciences, but in all relations she is entitled to the first rank.
Aha! I guess he liked maths.
He did, didn't he? But it's often said that maths is basically the language of the universe. And I quite like that notion. And I think that is why science tries to build its objectivity on mathematics.
Numbers, yeah.
And numbers. And
No, I mean, how could you do science without mathematics? Without summarizing things and looking at averages and stuff? You don't always get it right. It's difficult, but it's the best tool we have, I guess. Otherwise, you're just...
Exactly.
I agree. Yes.
All right. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode. I'd like to thank you, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
For your continued efforts. I'd like to thank our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so and support our show in all kinds of ways possible. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då!
Misslad. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
Oh, by the time it will already be late. So I'm gonna spare your life.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Blah blah blah. Okay, never mind. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good luck with a good segue from that.
Yeah.
Oh boy. The tape is rolling, but we have plenty of tape. Doesn't matter.
Oh, thanks. That's good.